What's up, marketers, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Colony podcast. I'm Liza from Xgrowth to tell you that each episode we bring in B2B leaders to chat about how you can achieve those everyday wins in the marketing world. Whether you're new to the B2B game, working at a leadership level, or even just showing some interest, we know you'll love the episode. So grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. I'm Shaheen Hoda with Xgrowth, and today I have a returning guest. We have Stephanie McCredie, Senior Director of ABM and Strategic Accounts for Asia Pacific at Salesforce, joining me on the podcast. And we're going to be talking about the intersection of AI and ABM. I'm very excited. Salesforce, specifically the company itself, has done a lot in the field of AI. So very excited to have this conversation. Stephanie, thanks for coming on the show again.
Thank you. I'm excited to have a discussion with you again.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I think, AI obviously is a very hot topic. We have this question at the end of each podcast where we ask people, what are they excited about when it comes to B2B? And I'd say maybe 90% of people just go and say AI. And they're like LLMs and, whatever it is, Gen AI. And, I think it's a very big topic, especially in marketing as a whole. So I'm super excited to get your take on it, specifically when it comes to ABM as well. I want to start with, let's talk about the areas that you're seeing AI playing a role. I'd love to get kind of a lay of the land from your perspective.
Sure. Thank you. I also have thought about what excites me about B2B today, and absolutely AI is top of the list. So yeah, I sort of see, 5 or 6 areas where immediately AI is already playing a role in ABM, or for some organizations, is going to play a role. So the first, and if I go through some of the sequence of what we're doing in an ABM capacity. So insights and analytics is where we start. That's how we become account-based, is by using really specific insights. So you can help, AI can help you understand the engagement history of your customers. It can help you segment your customers, especially if you're going into a one-to-few model and you're clustering. It can help you, it can power up your recommendations, whether it be offers based on the data that you've got with every engagement that a customer might have with you, and also behavioral data and analytics. So, looking at transactions or responses, conversions, really digging into that data to segment at the campaign level as well. So that's sort of on the insights and analytics. Account selection. So how, that's also a critical part of account-based marketing. It can be the make or break of your program as to whether you've got the right accounts selected. So, in Salesforce, we use Einstein as our AI, and that can help us analyze the key data about the accounts to help find those that are most likely to buy and that are most addressable by your own solutions in your organization. We also look at profiling stakeholders within, and as a third element. So, when we look at, we've talked about insights and analytics and account selection, but let's get down to the decision makers. How can we profile which are the ones within those accounts that are going to be most important as well? So profiling stakeholders is another element. A few more, data-driven customer journeys. So how can you use AI to for journey triggers? Like, what is going to be the best experience or engagement to move the customers along that journey? And refining messages and offers. I can talk about that a bit later. Messaging is a really exciting area that I've personally been experimenting a lot with. And also measurement. How can AI help you measure what is working, what may not be working, and then, using that data to help, go around that cycle of customer journeys and different engagements. So there's sort of the 6 different areas that I see.
Interesting. So I think a lot of people who might be listening to our conversation would go and say, hey, I see potentially where refining messaging and the offer could benefit from AI. That's probably the most commonly used element of it, right? It is what is very accessible to everybody else. I definitely want to touch on some of the other components as well of like how that would look like, and how do you go about using, for example, the analytics component? How do you the account selection piece? That's fascinating, where you could be enabled by AI. Should we start with number one, Stephanie, and work our way through this?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So let's talk about analytics. I mean, I'd love to hear you talked about how it can craft the offer and a few other elements. Can we dive a little bit deeper there?
Sure. So for insights and analytics, really looking at the behavior of the accounts that you've got, or looking into the accounts you want to select, as well as the analytics on what is engaging them the most, with your brand. And that engagement could be around particular tactics that might be working. That engagement could be how you refine your sales efforts, not just your marketing. So, in our Salesforce CRM, we're tracking a lot of not just the marketing touches, but the sales touches across that journey as well. So how do they intersect? How are you using those insights to help progress a customer on a journey? If they've been to a face-to-face event, for example, you're not going to take them back to, will they download a form or will they complete a form, for example? The next touch might be with a salesperson, or a more intimate engagement with a few customers rather than a large event, for example. So really using your insights to help drive your engagements. Also looking at, what are the recommended offers that we should be putting in front of our customers? So using those insights and analytics to say, hey, this sort of profile data, what we're seeing in the engagement or the offers that are being most successful in this, type of customer, whether it's a customer in a particular industry. You might be looking at, customers in financial services or in telecommunications, and what has been more successful in other customers in that industry that could actually apply to the one you're targeting. Behavioral data as well, transactions that are happening, not just engagements and responses, but what's converting as well. So digging into that data at the individual segment or campaign level, monitoring those dashboards with deep analytics and looking at customer trends, as well as how that might look into, how that might trigger whether you're improving your website. So that's some examples there.
I love that. That is very rich. And, I later on want to ask you, it's like if somebody is listening here in terms of how can they go and implement this, but let's do that after we go through the 6 elements. So let's talk about the next one, which is the account selection. You talked about, using Einstein at the organization. And I'm also very aware that certain information you might not be able to share, but what, from the things that you can share, love to hear a little bit more about the account selection process. Like, what are the elements that are feeding into the engine? What are some of the outcomes that you see from there? Is it only your one-to-one accounts? Is it like building clusters of accounts? How does again, let's dive a little bit deeper into the account selection process.
Yeah, sure. So from an account selection point of view, you're looking at, or we're looking at, not just what are the accounts that are the top accounts in their industry, but looking at what's our total addressable market. So, and when I say addressable, for your brand, who can you serve and who can you engage with that is really aligned to what solutions that are going to benefit that customer and the pain point that they might be looking to solve. So really looking across both internal and external data to select your accounts. Internal data, can we address it? What are our account plans telling us? What are our sales teams telling us? You can put those account plans through AI, to really bring out what that's telling you. And it can also be matched with external data as well. So I would say from an account selection point of view, you absolutely need to look at how you use AI from both your internal data that you've got and your external data. And also, I want to mention, and we were going to cover this later on, there's certain things that you still need the human involved with. So balancing the data that you're getting and what AI is telling you to some of what is not in those sources of data that you've got and that are going to be in the discussions that you have with sales team and what they're really feeling and seeing and what their customers are telling you that may not be in those other sources.
Do you need one of the problems that a lot of organizations have is that, hey, sales doesn't fill all the fields that I need them to fill in the CRM. Is that a problem that you're facing? Is that an issue that, can have a direct negative impact, a negative or positive impact on the account selection process for you and what you experience?
We work a lot with our sales teams to make sure the touches are captured. They understand that the more data that we have in our CRM, the more likely that we can help them in engaging with their customers from a marketing perspective, and the partnership between sales and marketing, both the people and the touches that we're having with, the best way for us to develop a journey with the sales team is if we can get those insights from our CRM system. Look, some salespeople are going to be better than others. I like to use really strong salespeople who are really successful as our case study to others who may not be as thorough in what they do. We also obviously have our business development reps, so not just our face-to-face sellers, but our business development reps. There is so much that is driven through our CRM that there's a lot of data there that they're capturing either in their own interaction with a customer, but also in the regular discussions they're having with their face-to-face account team that can actually be input into that system. There are several other teams, like would be in other organizations that are not just the face-to-face sellers, but what are your customer success teams engaging with? What, when our partners are selling into the account, how are our partner managers keeping that up to date? How are we making sure that our consultants are also, and our technology architects with the customers? So it's not just the salespeople that are using our CRM, it's other customer-facing teams, whether they be telephone or in person, that may not be the primary account executive on the account.
Interesting. So collecting all that information from all those points is basically what brings all of it together. Okay.
Yes.
Stephanie, let's talk about customer journeys. That's an exciting one. How are you implementing that? How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So I like to think of them as AI-driven journey triggers. So how is AI helping us trigger the relevant and real-time experiences that move the customer along the buying journey? So AI-driven decisions can help determine the most relevant and the next engagement that a customer that you want with your customer, with recommendations that are based on that real-time customer behaviour. Real-time as well as historical data, business-specific data sets. It could be pricing, for example. So those journeys are really important for us in account-based marketing, because that sometimes differentiates us from other styles of marketing, is that we are deliberately mapping a journey for a customer, a one-to-one customer, or a segment or cluster of accounts. So we want to make sure that every touch point that we're planning is relevant and timely, but it's also in real time, because AI can help us say, hey, we might have, for example, planned a particular journey, but what, AI is telling us is actually they've interacted with this, but also your sales team, your business development rep, that might actually mean that a point in your journey needs to be changed because of, how they're interacting in real time. We have Data Cloud, so we can activate, Data Cloud audiences with data points that influence channel, content, frequency, like how we want to make sure that customers are not being targeted too many times in a short period of time, but that it is relevant to them at the right time. And as I said, refreshing those journeys with the most up-to-date data as they occur.
Interesting. Would you be able to give an example of how an AI-driven journey trigger would work? And it could be a particular specific example that, hey, we had this thing and we got this insight and we changed it in this format. Does anything come to mind? And if it doesn't, it's fine. But I just thought I'd ask.
We could, for example, have a large face-to-face event. It could be our world tour in Sydney that really engages a group of customers that could have been selected for account-based marketing or a particular customer. And we may not have necessarily expected them to engage in several elements of that. So we could be having a campground where they're where we know that they've attended a session and they've also seen a demo, but they've also been to, a very VIP experience. We might have only planned or thought that they're going to come to our VIP experience that is designed for the full day, but they've actually gone in and seen a session with more junior members of their team or influencers, not necessarily decision makers in their team, but they've said, hey, want you to come to this session, and have taken them also to a demo. We may not have expected them to have been part of those other touch points. We might have said, look, they're a member of the C-suite, so we've been designing their interaction over here. So when they engage with something like that, it might be rich in content. They might be going to a session that is really rich in content, getting hands-on with the demo. It could be about a particular customer that we're demonstrating what another customer is doing. And so we're thinking, well, how can we have some really content-rich engagements with them afterwards? So we'll be looking at what AI is telling us and saying, you know what, the next engagement is probably for a sales team to speak to them. It's not necessarily to invite them to, a dinner with 50 other customers. It's like they've gotten really hands-on with a particular solution. How can we get our salesperson to get involved? Or how can we get another customer to meet with them that is already doing this? So AI could be telling us, gathering that data for us and giving some ideas as to what the next touch might be.
That sounds awesome. That sounds amazing. Okay, so that was a great example, and thank you very much for that, Stephanie. Next one is refining messaging and offer. Let's dive into that. How are you navigating those waters?
Yeah, so refining messaging, I've been using several different tools, and we've been rolling out a third-party tool within Salesforce to help us refine our messaging, but it's also being fed with our own brand and tone and our own solutions. So, ChatGPT, for example, you might use to help you design or an invitation to an event, or to come up with a theme for an event based on what you want to be talking about. But that is taking more external data and being more generic. It's not actually saying it in Salesforce tone, and it's not necessarily including some of the Salesforce solutions that we might want to highlight, for example. So we've been using a great tool through our brand team globally and piloting something which has been really unique in that now when we engage a copywriter, a human copywriter, there's only some tweaks that are required that we're able to use AI for messaging in that way. When it comes to offers, so our Einstein decisions has an algorithm that uses real-time and historical profile data to identify relevant and dynamic offers through the customer journey. So as we continue to develop content and offers and deliver those to our customers, the new data will continually feed into Einstein to improve our ability to deliver more relevant messages ongoing. And more relevant, offers as well. So really dynamic in that way and using the historical and real time.
That sounds great. So no, that's fantastic. Another great example. We got one more before I got a couple more questions. But last one that you mentioned is measurement. let's unpack that and go from there, please.
Sure. So from a measurement perspective, we want to make sure that we're engaging with our customers in a way that's going to move and progress an opportunity through a sales cycle, that's going to help our sales teams and going to be most relevant to the customer at the same time. So when it comes to our measurements, we want to look at, as marketers, what has been sourced through marketing, what has been progressed via marketing, and what are the highest conversions. So AI is going to help us analyze what are the offers or the touch points that are having the strongest conversion into revenue. We need those conversions, but we've got to start actually with pipeline at the other side. So we then look back and say, what have been the touch points that has helped us get that highest conversion? And let's look at making sure that they're the touch points that we might build in to that segment of customers going forward, or to other segments of customers, in saying, it was this type of touch or this particular offer that drove our highest conversion to ACV or our best ROI. So we're looking at those sorts of elements to make sure that we're not just getting a great number of leads that fill the funnel at the top end and that are progressing through the funnel, but then they never convert. So we want to look at conversion rates and ROI, not just pipeline or MQLs or things like that. So, we're using AI to help us understand what is having that highest conversion, what is also having the best ROI as well. But we know that marketing is also responsible for delivering the MQLs or delivering opportunities at the top of the funnel, but we really also need to be looking at the full sales cycle.
Absolutely. Okay. We've covered insight analytics. We've covered account selection. What I did realize that I've missed is the profiling of stakeholders. Stephanie, let's go back to that one. That was the third one that you mentioned. Let's touch on that before we move on.
Sure. Profiling of stakeholders. So we're often looking at our data that our sales teams might have been putting in the CRM to understand who are the decision makers or influencers that are included in those opportunities. From using AI, we're looking at then what have those decision makers in particular engaged with from a marketing perspective. So it might be that they're on the opportunity and that the sales teams are engaging with them, but how have we engaged them in marketing, or how would we like to engage them? So we want to make sure that we're profiling those stakeholders. And this is an area actually where our sales teams are quite frequently and actively coming to us and saying, I'm just about to have a meeting with Shahin and I don't know anything about him. He's new to my account. What else can you tell me about him? And we can use AI tools to sweep information from external sources, but we can also look at internal sources, which I'll get to in a moment. But the external sources, like, most people who are listening are no doubt using are things like intent data, are using things like, what have the engagements been in your organization? External data can also include, PR, what are they engaging with externally? Could be from LinkedIn data, could be from PR, other, external sources. So it can pick up as well on the language that they're using. And, I've used tools as well that might come up with, when you put some of those together, it comes up with, this person's really positive, or this person seems to be really succinct in what they're sharing, or they're very data driven in what they've been discussing in the media, or what they've put on LinkedIn, or these are the topics that they're most engaging with on LinkedIn. These are the people that they connect with the most, or that they put the most likes on, or they reshare this person's content. So having some of that information, and we've even been able to identify, who are the partners that they tend to be most connected to. Are we working with the partners that they might trust or engage with the most. So profiling them as well from an internal perspective, we're a person, all of us, most of us listening have probably worked in other organizations, so have our customers. So just because they're new to the account that salesperson is working on does not mean they're new to engaging with Salesforce, or they're not brand new in their very first organization. They've been elsewhere. So how can we look at internal data that we've got of how they engage with us in other organizations that they've worked with, and what were the key touch points? And it could also highlight who are the people that they've engaged with in our organization, that you can go and have, not just, AI sweeping it, but you can have humans saying, hey, Steph, I can see that you've engaged with Shahin before when he was at XYZ company. Can you tell me a bit more about that engagement? So again, I don't want to have listeners thinking that AI is the only element that should excite them going forward in B2B. But to me, it's actually the partnership of AI with humans. So it's how it's arming us as humans to make those data-driven decisions or to develop messaging and offers, but it's not completely, it's not replacing the human element. It should really be seen as augmenting it. So I used to call it years ago augmenting intelligence, not artificial, but augmenting.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Well, that kind of brings us very nicely to the next question that I want to ask you. We've touched on insight and analytics and account selection, profiling, and customer journeys and messaging and measurement. What are some of the ABM areas that you don't see AI having as big of an impact on? Are there areas that you're like, well, this still needs a very heavy oversight, human oversight, and we have not been able to, really find a great solution, AI solution to, as you said, replace or augment what we're doing here? Does anything come to mind, Stephanie?
Look, I wouldn't say that AI can't do, but maybe it's where humans need to be involved and where humans can, again, what I said earlier, where humans can augment or really get hands-on to make sure that we're not just using AI data. And look, an example might be, human experience. Humans can be creative. Is AI at the point where it's really creative in the design or in the messaging? So humans engage with other humans. So that element of collaboration, creative and strategic thinking, really brainstorming with other organizations. AI is not necessarily going to be able to give me all the insights to be creative in our messaging or in taking those insights into a customer journey, for example. So we want to make sure that our messaging is authentic, that it's personalized, that it's human, that it speaks to what Salesforce or your own organization in the same tone. So as I mentioned earlier, we can use AI tools to develop some of our messaging. And I've used, a few different tools, a few different third-party tools, but I can't say that none of them have actually given me the 100% message that I'm trying to get across. I am always tweaking or adding something extra that I think brings that personalized touch as well. And AI, I'm not sure it can help create the emotional connection. So when I talk about authentic and personalized and human, creating that emotional connection, that I think is where humans play an important role. So, and we still need to be, responsive and measured and mindful, but we just can't take, AI as, the only answer. I think humans can absolutely augment, especially things like the personalization, the creativity, the collaboration to come to, but AI can help inform that. But I still want to be able to talk to a salesperson and I want to be able to map that out with them, because is it actually what they want to help them take that customer to the next level? And as you mentioned earlier, do our salespeople use CRM for every single discussion and every single interaction with a customer. If they're not using it, we need to talk to them. So we still need to balance what AI is telling us with some of the human interaction and also some of the data that you don't want to put in a CRM that could be very sensitive to a customer as well. So that might be something that we can more have a private conversation about.
Of course, those are great points. I guess my next question is, if there's a marketer who's listening to this conversation and they're thinking, I really want to drive up the adoption of AI in my ABM work or marketing work, what do you think are the low-hanging fruits, especially out of the 6 areas that we've touched on? What would you say, hey, start here and build from there? What would be your recommendation?
Well, before I get into the, which part of the 6, I'd actually say start with one use case. Start with your biggest pain point or a particular customer and pilot, what I'm about to say with that or a cluster of accounts. If you start with one use case and that becomes successful, that's going to help with your business case for rolling it out in other scenarios. So, as I mentioned earlier, insights and account selection is the starting point for any ABM efforts. So using AI in that regard. If that's not possible, if you don't have the right third-party relationships or internal CRM or things like that where AI can draw those insights and help you with account selection, at least start with simple refining of your messaging. Whether you're using, many of the tools that are available to actually put in, look, I'm doing an invite to an event, or I'm trying to write an introduction for an RFP to help my account team. Then, start by putting in some of what you want to say and see if it can refine your messaging. So that's probably, when you're starting with a use case, look at insights and account selection, or at least at minimum, the simple refining of your messaging. And then AI can also be your secret weapon for scaling your programs, for becoming more efficient by looking at your results and measurements. So if you've started with a use case, use AI to help you with insights on that use case. Then as you're engaging with your customers, refining the messaging. And then if that seems to be successful and you want to develop a business case to roll that out, look at the results to help you scale or become more efficient.
That's such great advice. Stephanie, what is on the horizon? What are you seeing? What are some of the changes you anticipate that we're going to see in the coming maybe year or 6 months in the case of the speed of AI when it comes to ABM?
Look, I think it's going to be expected of us. I think if we're not using AI, we're not going to be as efficient to really drive those results that are based on insights and based on, recommended customer journeys, messaging, offers. It's just going to take us longer, I think, to engage with a customer in a meaningful way and also to gain that trust from your sales teams. They're coming from other organizations that could be using AI, but really account-based is exactly that. It's account-based marketing. So you need to be really on the front foot to be gaining those insights in a really efficient way so that you can engage in the most relevant, timely manner with both your customer and your sales team, bringing those insights to them. If they're not using AI, they're going to see that account-based marketing can bring to them the insights and the engagements that's going to help improve their engagements. And that could be our differentiator. That could absolutely be our differentiator from what our salespeople could be leveraging, but also from necessarily other parts of marketing. Other parts of marketing are absolutely using AI, but we can get down to account specifics or stakeholder specifics within our accounts. So to me, it's not an if you're using AI, it's how and to drive what.
Are you struggling with your campaigns? Maybe they're not performing as well as you thought they would. Well, luckily for you, the team at Xgrowth have nailed the art of account-based marketing. So if you'd like to know more about how you can hop on the ABM train, book a free consultation with the account-based marketing experts at Xgrowth to help you get started with your ABM journey today.
Stephanie, I got some rapid fire questions for you before we wrap up. You ready?
Okay.
Okay, let's do this.
Sure.
Let's dive in. First question I have is, what is one resource, this could be a book, a blog, a podcast, or a talk, that has had a profound impact on the way you work or live? This could be a recent one, or it could be something that you've come across way back.
Good question. I'm actually going to start with one that I think had a profound impact on the way I live that has also translated into the way I work. So a book by a well-known journalist or ex-journalist in Australia, Lee Sales. It's called One Ordinary Day. So I've actually got goosebumps thinking about it because we've had some terrifying occurrence happen in Sydney over the weekend.
Yeah.
And this talks about what resilience or what happens after the worst day of your life. Because the worst day of your life, you could have woken up and thought it was one ordinary day. So in that, she talks about some real case studies of people who've had, that are well known in Australia certainly, that have had the worst day of their life on one ordinary day. What are the key factors that help that person move on, I guess, and how they take that life-changing event to still be to develop their resilience, or to think about how they're moving forward and how that might change the way they work and live. And I have had personally probably three pretty big things happen in my life that have been tragic. My first one, absolutely, all of them was one ordinary day, but the first one changed my life from what everyone thought was perfect to being a change of course of how I thought about my day-to-day, even in my career, and what I was looking like to. So sorry, that's a long answer and quite deep.
No, that's great.
But it is, we're often, as people say, in the rat race or the mouse on the wheel. But what type of leader do you want to become? What type of mother, father, boyfriend, girlfriend, colleague, leader that you want to be? And sometimes it's those most life-changing events that show us our vulnerability and our resilience.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Stephanie. Yeah, that I'm going to check this book out for sure. It sounds strong. It sounds very strong. Second question I got, Stephanie, is if you could give one advice to B2B marketers, what would it be?
Customer first. Know your audience, speak in their language, be where they are. It's easy for us to get caught up in our own company's language, in all of the tools and measurements and what's being rolled out from your company globally or locally, as the next offer, but really dial into the customer. Know your audience, speak in their language, be where they are.
Love it. Okay. Question number 3. Who are some of the influencers? It could be influencers or thought leaders in the AI space. It could be in the B2B marketing space, in the ABM space. Who are some of the influencers that you keep a track on?
Yeah, so from an account-based marketing perspective, to me, it's Bev Burgess. She's often considered the founder of ABM. I think it was 20 years ago, and how she's evolved it, written several books. I was fortunate enough to do a certification several years ago in ABM, and she was my mentor. So she's based in the UK, but she does some great content and really thought-provoking, but very succinct as well. So Bev Burgess for sure. When it comes to other leaders, Richard Branson is one that, as a CEO, I also think he's often the CMO, or he holds several roles. So I find that, how he's developed businesses, he's failed as well. So, learning from his failures. Also, a lot of what he posts about is to do with his family, not just to do with his career and his companies, but people, he talks about how If you're not looking after your employees, they're not going to look after your customers. So Richard Branson. And then a third one might be Simon Sinek from a leadership perspective. Again, very thought-provoking, snackable content if you're listening to him online, just a few minutes. So they're probably the three from an ABM, a CEO, and a leadership angle.
Last question I have. I think you already know this question, which is what excites you about B2B today? And as I mentioned, a lot of people talk about AI, so I'm curious to hear what do we have here?
I'm not going to mention that one because, yes, it was the top of my list, as I mentioned earlier. So besides that, to me, marketing doesn't just have a seat at the table anymore. We have a voice and we have ears. So we're listening, and then we're having a voice at that table.
That's awesome. I know that is definitely been something that a lot of marketers have been working towards, and it's definitely great to see some of those developments in the leadership space. Stephanie, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast again. I've as always, I enjoy these conversations, and I'm sure a lot of listeners have taken a lot away as well. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I continue to enjoy the content that you share, and hope that this is helpful to your listeners.
Thank you, Stephanie. Absolutely.
Today's episode of Growth Colony was produced by Alexander Hipwell and Liza Maywald. It was edited by Dave Samito with additional editing by Liza Maywald and music arrangement by Alexander and Liza. Special thanks to Tina Wabe. We couldn't make the show without you. Growth Colony is hosted by Shaheen Hoda, Director of Growth at Xgrowth. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Do you think you'd be a great guest or just keen for a chat? Send through an email at podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's all for now. We'll catch you next week, right here on Growth Colony.